All right, let's dive into a really crucial piece of history, India's Foreigners' Order from 1948. This one document, written right after independence, basically set up the entire rulebook for every non-citizen in a brand new nation. So I want you to imagine stepping into India in 1948. It's a country that's figuring itself out, just months after independence and partition. What were the rules for outsiders? Well, this order wasn't just a few friendly guidelines. It was a complete, strict rulebook designed to control a foreigner's journey from the second they arrived until the moment they left. So let's start at the very beginning, the border. How did you even get in? The first thing you have to understand is that nothing was automatic. Your entire chance of getting in hinged on the decision of one key entity, the civil authority. They were the ultimate gatekeepers. So who or what was this civil authority anyway? The order defines it pretty simply. It's an official appointed by the central government. But don't just think of a customs agent. This was an entity with the huge and very specific power to say yes or no to your entire journey in India. And that brings up the big question, right? On what grounds could this civil authority actually tell someone to turn around and go home? Turns out, the order was very specific about that. The reasons for refusal, all laid out in Section 3, they really ranged from the purely bureaucratic to the deeply personal. Some were pretty straightforward, like not having a valid passport or visa. But others were way more subjective, like being of unsound mind or having an infectious disease. And on top of all that, there was a catch-all clause that allowed them to refuse entry based on any specific government order, which gave the state ultimate power right at the border. Okay, so you've made it past the border. What happened next? Well, as we're about to see, the official control was really just getting started. After getting in, every single foreigner had to get a permit. This document was your legal basis for even being in the country, and it spelled out exactly how long you were allowed to stay in India. But here's the really crucial point. This permit was less about freedom and way more about regulation. It wasn't just some stamp in your passport. It came with a very clear and very strict set of rules that govern your actions and your movements. And the level of detail here is pretty remarkable. According to Section 7, your permit wasn't just a suggestion. If it listed specific places you could be, you legally could not go anywhere else. You had to report to a local officer within 24 hours of arriving and leaving any of those places. And of course, you had to get out of the country before the permit expired, unless you managed to get an official extension. It was a really, really tightly managed system. And it went beyond just the permit. The order established even broader restrictions on a foreigner's life in India. The authorities could also just declare entire zones as off-limits, and these fell into two categories. First were prohibited places, which were often tied to national security stuff under the Official Secrets Act. You were completely forbidden from going there without permission. Then you had protected areas, where the government could slap on a whole range of conditions. Anything from forcing you to report to the police, all the way to banning you from taking pictures. These restrictions went deep into daily life, covering everything from your job to your social circle. If you wanted to work in a critical industry like energy, you needed special permission. The authorities could literally issue a written order telling you where you could and couldn't go, or even who you could hang out with. And if you wanted to do something like make a documentary or go on a mountaineering trip, you guessed it, that also required the government's stamp of approval. This direct quote from Section 11 of the order, it really sums up the incredible amount of power the authorities had. They could just write up an order imposing pretty much any condition they wanted on a foreigner. This gave them an absolutely massive amount of control. So you've navigated the rules of getting in and living in India. Now it's time to leave. Surely that part was straightforward, right? Not quite. The system was symmetrical. Just like you needed permission to get in, you needed official permission from that same civil authority to get out. So what on earth could stop you from actually departing? Again, the order had a very specific list of reasons. The official reasons for denying your exit, laid out in Section 5, were pretty broad. They covered legal stuff, like if you were needed for a criminal charge, and even geopolitical reasons, like if your leaving might hurt relations with another country. But the most powerful tool they had was this vague, catch-all phrase, your exit could be blocked if it was deemed not conducive to the public interest, a term that could mean almost anything. So when you put all these pieces together, entry, staying, and exiting, a very clear picture emerges. Here's the bottom line. The 1948 Foreigners' Order was designed from the ground up as an all-encompassing system of control. It created a legal framework that handed the state and its authorities significant, direct power over nearly every single part of a non-citizen's life in the country. And that leaves us with a final thought. This order was written just months after India's independence, in a completely different world. But it brings up a really compelling question for today. How do the principles laid out in a foundational document like this, one that's now over 75 years old, continue to echo and influence a nation's modern approach to its borders, its security, and all the visitors who cross them?